So let's talk about Angular dependency injection. I want to keep it practical. I want to jump right in. I'm not going to talk about why dependency injection and the whole ideas behind dependency injection. Like I said, my main goal is to explain completely how it works and how to use it. So let's dive in. In Angular, we basically got two injectors. We've got the R3 injector. On the left side, I marked it as a module injector. And we've got an injector per every component or for each directive. It's more valid to say each directive because component is extend directives. So we're dealing with two types of injector. For each component slash directives, an instance of injector is created by Angular, and we've got an injector on the module level. Sometimes we refer it as the root injector. But technically the name, and you've probably seen it in some error messages if you had any issue with dependency injection, you can see the node injector and the R3 injector. All right, cool. Now there's two ways to register our logic, our code to the Angular injector. If we want to register it on the node level, don't worry, we're going to dive in and explain everything. We're going to use, like you see here on the right side, inside a component or directive metadata, we can declare that our code should be provided on this level, on this injector, by using an array of providers or view providers. On the other hand, if we like to register our code to the root injector, to the R3 injector, we can do it using the injectable decorator or by adding it to the NV module providers array. All right. Wait a second, my slides went wild. Cool. Now, we do have some kind of a flow when you're looking for a specific dependency. So let's say that we've got a component. Don't worry, we're going to jump into the code in a second. Each component got its own element injector, and components are ordered in some kind of a hierarchy. We've got a parent-child relationship. So when you try to inject something into your component class, Angular will look into the specific node injector that associated with this instance of your component. If it won't find it there, you're going to look at the parent level and then on the parent component until it hits the module. It's going to look for your code on the module level. Now, there is a lazy loaded modules that can instantiate some objects. And there is one root module for the entire app, which usually by convention we call the app module. So in terms of looking for our code, the dependency, the injector, gonna look, like I said, go through the component hierarchy until it hits the module that wrap them together. And if it's not provided in this module specifically, it's gonna look at the conceptually at the app module. Now there is another level of injection which is less familiar, which is called the platform. We're gonna see it in action in a second. And if the code that you're trying to inject, the token is not registered on any injector in any level, in any module or component, you're gonna hit the null injector. That's the one that you see on the top. So if you ever got this error of a null injector, that's probably the reason. You know what? Let's try to do something. Let's try to inject something which does not exist. All right. So here I've got a very simple Angular app which I just created just before my talk. Let's see it right here. All right. Cool. And I'm going to create a series. basically a file. Let's call this counter service. Edit to GitHub. It's gonna look like, just wanna have type to work with. All right, counter service. Basically, it's not. It's just gonna be a class, nothing more. And then inside my app component code, I'll create a constructor and I'll try to inject it. Counter service. Go back to the app, open the dev tool. All right. And I want you to notice two things. First of all, the null injector error. So eventually I hit the null injector. Look that notice that there is an R3 injector on the app module because it wasn't provided in any other modules, any other nodes. So eventually Angular looked at the app module, couldn't find it, hits the null injector error, and they decided that there is no provider whatsoever for the counter service. So the only reason that I generated this error is because I want you to know and speak the right terms, use the right terms. So you know that the R3 injector, that's the root level module injector, all right? And the null injector is some kind of, an injector, which is nothing, a node that can throw an error. Nice. Let's go back to the slides. So this is another diagram. I think that I need to fix my animation a little bit, but you get the idea. All right. So if it's not provided in any module, and it's not provided on the root module, and it's not provided on the platform module, the null injector is going to throw an error. So until you reach to the top. In a way, it's kind of, when you think about it, it's kind of like the prototype chain in JavaScript. Basically, pretty much similar, looking for references in code until it hits the top. All right. So let's talk about how we can take our code and let the injector know about it. Because eventually, I want to be able to provide my code through the constructor. That's the whole point. That's the beauty of dependency injection in Angular. Injector, we've got the node injector, both of them implement and extend the abstract injector, which means that both of them are gonna have basically the same method. It's important because we don't need to learn different ways to work with different injectors. So both of them sharing the same signature. That's what I'm trying to say. If we want to provide our code, we need to provide basically two things: a token, a key, and instructions for Angular dependency injection, what to do with this code. I'll explain in a second. Once we've got a token, once we get the key, and we've got the instructions, we can call injector get and provide the key. We don't need to call the injector get directly because we can just declare that we want a specific dependency in our constructor, and under the hood, Angular will call injector get, passing the token and provide us the code that we need. All right. So let's talk a little bit about tokens. There are two types of tokens that we can use. One of them is type, just the name of the class, or interface, like we're going to see in a second. The other one is a specific special key that we can create using Angular called an injection token. Let's start to explore our options and how we can create code and inject it before we dive any deeper. So I'm gonna split my screen, and right here I'm gonna open this counter service that I created, which is currently just a simple class that doesn't do anything special, all right? Let me introduce a count and start with 0 and an increment method we're just going to take this count and add 1 to it. And I think I've got a typo here, right? Now, try and do something like this. I can go to my app module. As you can see on the right side, I can find the provider array, and I can register my class like this. I think that's the most common known way to register your code to the injector. So counter service, and now because it's provided on the module level, if I try to inject it, probably I won't get any errors. You can see, all right? But actually what I want us to align with is that doing this, using this syntax, is just a shorthand. Remember that we talked about the token, the key, and the instructions. So when you do this, what you're basically doing is the following. You provide a key, which is going to be the type, the counter service, and then you give Angular instructions. The most common instruction will be, I'm going to provide you a class. Now, because the key is the type, and the class that we're going to use is the same type, we've got this short way to register it. We just mention the class name and let Angular do this, basically register our class to the injector with this extended syntax like you see here. Use class min, hey Angular, please create an instance of this class, which means that if I inject it for the first time, it's going to create an instance, and every time you're going to ask for the counter service, you're going to get an instance. So if I come here and actually to keep it like best practice on init, right? Then implement on init and go this counter. I want to be able to use it. This counter. Let's just log it to see exactly what's going on there. And as you can see here, I've got an instance, I've got the count, and I've got the increment method on it, which is cool. But what if I've got something else that I want to inject? For example, I want to get reference to the class itself. I want to be able to inject by myself. So Angular, hey, create an instance of our counter service. Instead, use value. So take this and provide it as is. Let's see how it looks like. Now you can see the class. Now to keep it practical, there's probably no reason to do this. I mean, right now I can come here and I can just create my own new this counter because I've got the class definition. There's no reason to do it. The use case exists if we like to be able to inject values. Basically, and the most common example is if you've got a configuration somewhere like this, you know, let's create let's create a configuration. Or you know what? It's just an object, and here you've got values. You've got a key, and it's very specific key. And I can make it case, Now I want to provide this object as is because it's not a class. I don't want to instantiate it in any way. I can use constants. But then it's look funny because I'm using the count service as a key, but I'm providing an object. Let's see how it looks like. All right, so you can see here it's just an object with values, but I can't use this key. I mean, I can technically, but it looks strange. We're gonna tackle it in a second. Last thing that almost actually the last option to instructions for the injector in Angular would be we've got class, use value, use factor, which accept the function, and use existing is a special class that probably going to mention during this hour. All right. What is a use factory? Well, use factory accept to get a function that returns something, which means that I'm telling Angular injector when I'm asking for the counter service, I want you to run this function. So technically, if I do something like this, new counter service, I'm going to get something very similar. Come on. I'm going to get something very similar to the way that I just, just use a class out of it. Are you shouting at me? No, you accept this. You're not happy. Are you? Why aren't you happy? Because I'm missing something? Probably. The object, the traffic. All right. Let's see how that looks like. So here's the instance of the counter service. And this is probably the three most common ways to write your code to the injector. But there is another thing here. Let me go back to the first example, the counter service. When you're building large systems, in some point in time, you'll find yourself maybe not using all the services that you provided because of two reasons. One, your code base might grow and you technically you forgot some services, but you're not using it often. When you register your service, when you do an import statement like the module and provide your code, basically this code in your bundle. Whatever you use it, you actually use it somewhere or not. So these days, it's considered to be a best practice not to provide on the module level by using the array of providers, but instead, I'll remove this import. Instead, using the decorator, right? Injectable. Actually, if you notice, I haven't used it and my code still works. Just means that if I don't have any, I don't really use the injectable decorator and use the provided in root level, including this service on the module providers. But because it imports the counter service, so it's probably going to be part of my bundle. But if there is no place that I'm actually using this, so I'm not importing this file anywhere, my environment can perform tree shaking, which means that going through look for actually an import statement and try to understand if I'm using this piece of code. And if not, there's no need to include this part of my bundle. What I'm trying to say, guys, is that eventually most of your services, most of them, at least from my experience, going to be provided as singletons, the root level, the module level. So use the provided in root to enable tree shaking. Great, let's move forward. So this is a slide I created for you with these 3 ways to register your code. As a class, provide a class, tell Angular create an instance, so use class. If you want to provide a function and you want to execute the result, use the factory. And if you just do, you got an object, you want to tell Angular keep it is, use value. All right. Now there is another special way to accomplish this. Use listing. This is for specific cases where you got an instance of a service, maybe you made, and you just get a reference for it. The way to do it is to use the use existing instruction, which kind of like literally saying exactly what it's going to do. It's going to use an existing class to reference for, right? All right. So let's dive a little bit better and deeper inside. Let's start with this. So I'm going to remove provided in root from this class, and instead I want to do this. Inside my app component, which is currently my only component. Now what? Let's create another component. Let me use the Angular schematics, create a component. Let's call it just a child component. I want to keep it that. I don't want to create any extra directory. And now I've got a child component. Inside my child component, I'm going to do the following thing. I'm going to ask for the counter service. Now I'm even going to do public counter service. And here I'm gonna display the count. So count. So I'm gonna get here nice presentation of how to count. Because it's an H3 inside of a D, instead of a P, which is semantically wrong. And here I'm gonna create a button. And just make it a little btn primary. Increase. And here, just gonna capture the click, and we're gonna have this counter dot increment. Now, you might wonder, why do I use the this keyword? Well, typically you don't need to. That's some kind of a new habit, but don't confuse it too much. So I just want to make sure that it's implicit. You mean this, but you should know that you can use this. And a little bit off topic, sometimes it's become very, very useful. If you have to pass functions and you want to keep the scope right, sometimes it is possible and it is useful to use the bind and provide this. This was completely off topic. All right, so now we've got an app component that injects the counter service. Inside my app component, I'm going to come here and use my child component to move this image, right? The app child component. Which, if I go back to the browser, I'm expecting to increase and everything works. But now, if you blinked, you might ask yourself, all right, wait a second. Where is this counter service coming from? Is it coming from the app module? I see it here. It's coming from the component. I don't see it here. Actually, I think it's just a huge error. Let's try to, let me try to fix it. Because I'm not providing this code in any way. So I've got a counter service. Let me just make sure. I think it was just cached. I'm injecting it, asking for it, but it's not exist on the app module. And it is, yeah, it's not part of any providers and it's not decorated with provided in. So I believe it was just an error. And in a second, we're going to get the project up and running again. Generating browser application bundles. Yeah, we like Angular, but sometimes it takes too much time to rebuild it. So let's review, and meanwhile, what I'm trying to achieve, I'm trying to show you that if I'm going to inject on my child component, I'm going to ask for a counter service. And on the app component, I'm don't have any definition, I'm not using it. And on my app module, there is no definition whatsoever. I'm expecting to get an injector error, and here it is, all right? So R3 injector, because we couldn't find it nowhere. Let's talk about the element injector, which means that I can go ahead to my child component, and right here, I can use an array of providers. And I can tell the injector for the app child component, please register my counter service. So now my child component, when I ask for the counter service, it can find it on the app child instance and everything should work. But now you can ask yourself, right? Let's put this here. You can ask yourself, all right, so what's the point? It looks strange. It's like I'm repeating my code. And wait a second, what's going to happen if I'm going to remove this from here and I'm going to put it on the parent? Well, in this case, everything still works because Angular looking for the counter service on the child, he couldn't find it, so we go ahead and look at the parent. And what if we remove it from the parent? We're expecting to get an error, the null injector, which comes from the R3. But let's do something else. Let's provide it here, right? And I'm gonna take a constructor, and I'm gonna say counter service instance. I want to know how many instances I'm creating. On my child component, on my provider array, I'm gonna mention the counter service. And on my app component, which is the parent, I'm gonna provide the counter service. And by the way, how many instances do I have now? Right? Think about it for a second. If each component, the child and the root, in this case, app component and child component, if both of them, if I'm speaking the truth, and each one of them create its own injector, I'm expecting to see 2 instances of the counter service, right? And nope. Why not? The thing is that services are lazy instantiated. So here I'm using the counter service, which is registered on the node injector. So an instance was created. But on my app component, I'm injecting the counter service, but I'm not trying to inject it. So no one reached it. No one asked for it. Let's see if that's true. Right? So now I'm expecting to see. So we just learned another thing, which you might not familiar with. Services are lazy instantiated. ask for it, it won't be instantiated. So what we've got now, we've got the child component. Let me just create some CSS class because I want it to be like very, let's say, let's get very visual. I'm going to wrap it with a card so we see that this is like a child, all right? Child works with increase. Because the next thing that I'm going to do, take this code, same here with the button and everything, and I'm going to put it on the parent as well. So here, let's remove this. That's the child, but this one going to be the parent. I'm going to wrap it with a div as well, and I'm going to give this CSS class like card and card danger. I think there is a class like this. Maybe I'm wrong, so forget about it. Using the Bootstrap CSS behind the scenes, I remember that there is like a card, a danger or something like this, but or primary, I might be wrong. So probably not the right container for this, but this is not a CSS class workshop. So now we've got the counter, and here I'm just gonna say, app component, and this one gonna be the child component. If we come back here, we can see the child, and we can see the app. And because each one of them got its own instance, there's no problem. I mean, each one of them can manage its own state. And now it's become very, very important to understand this hierarchy in node injectors, because you might get into some situations, for example, that you want to, in some way, interfere in this natural order. For example, you want both child and app to share the same state. And this one is easy to achieve. You can go to child, you can remove the counter service from the child node injector, and then both of them gonna share the same state. On the other hand, maybe you want to do something a little bit different. Maybe you want to say, this one, I want it to increase the child. I'm going to have another button, give it a different class. And here I want to increase my parent. So basically, I want to be able to increase myself and increase the parent, which technically might be a problem. So if I try to do public counter service, I'm gonna get, well, my own counter service. And what I really want to do, I wanna duplicate this line, and I want to say this is the parent counter, and this is my own counter. So here I want to be able to increase my parent counter. But because both of them using the same token, the same key, both of them are counter service eventually, it's not going to work. We're going to get the same instance. So because now we learn about node injectors and hierarchy, it's very important that all of us will be familiar with the API of how we control it. For example, I can go ahead and decorate this one as cells. And by this, I'm telling the Angular injector, go ahead and take this instance, but from this node injector. The other one, I want to tell him the exact opposite, like skip cells. So for the parent injector, when you look for it, skip my own and look for the other one. So now, hopefully, right, I've got a better control of who's doing what. And why this is important? Because it gives us the options to make our app a little bit more dynamic. For example, when I skip self, I'm telling Angular, look for the counter service, but not on myself. And if it's not exist here, it means that I'm going to skip self, start climbing up the tree until I hit the root module. If there is no root module, it's going to fall, right? You're going to get an error. Because skipping myself doesn't mean stop at the parent level, but keep moving up, all right? I can be more precise. I can say skip self, but specifically look at my host. So you don't need to go too far. But I want to show you something else. When you build highly dynamic apps, there's going to be some situations where, especially when you lazy load your code, there's gonna be some situations where some providers won't be available for you. In these use cases, you want to protect your code. You want to make sure that it's not going to crash because he can't find a dependency. For this, we've got another decorator, which I think is the most useful and practical one. This one called an optional. For example, the skip cell saying, look for the counter service, skip my own node injector, and look at the parent injectors. And if for some reason it's not exist, because again, we're building a highly dynamic system, so the parent might not have the specific provider that we're looking for, we can use the optional decorator. Now, the optional decorator is an interesting one because basically what it does is going to look for the counter service. If the counter service does not exist, it's just going to return null. Now, with this code, we can keep our code a little bit more tighter. For example, let's try to use the checking right here, right? Because I don't want my code to crash. Let's try to come here to the app component and remove this counter service, right? I'm going to remove it completely. Actually, this one's going to crash, but let's remove this as well. Let's see what's going to happen now. All right. The app is not crashing, although I'm trying to go ahead and take from my parent. Remove the optional. Right, I'm going to get an error. So, to summarize this part, once you understand this whole hierarchy of node injectors and you get familiar with these extra decorators, it can help you stabilize a highly dynamic set of components. Most of the time, service is probably going to be injected on the root level. But by using self, skip self, optional, and host, you can make your app much more, let's say, controllable, if there's a word like this. So I'm going to go back to my app component, and I'm going to bring back the counter service. I want to talk a little bit about the root level injector, the R3. All right. I've got some slides for you, which I'm going to share when this session is end, and if you visit my links, that explain this whole hierarchy that I just showed you. All right. The view providers is another way to provide dependencies on the node element. I don't want to talk too much about it because I think that once you got this concept of hierarchy and node injectors, understanding what the view providers do and when to use them instead of providers make more sense. Technically, if you use view providers, the instance is scoped only for the component where you provide the direct children and not all the children. Just the component itself. Cool. So let's talk a little about root injector. So this is like the slides that I showed you before, all right? And I see that I've got the same error as before, just repeating my slide. And as a recap, all right, we can protect ourselves using the optional decorator. So when we hit the null injector, it won't crash our code. And I want to talk about provided in platform because it's a very interesting use case, if you ask me. So for this, I'm going to create another module in my app. So I'm going to come here and create a module. I'm going to call this module app2 because it's not very creative, but we'll get the point, all right? So this is app2. And on this module, I'm going to create a component. And let's call this component app2. Is it legal to use this name? I'm not sure. I'm going to find it in a second, all right? I'm just going to move it here and refactor my code because too much directories. And let's see what's going on and learn some cool stuff about Angular along the way. First of all, this app2 module is going to have declaration, right? App2 component. I want this component to be rendered on my index, so I'm going to tell Angular this is my bootstrap component, app2 component. And just so we know that this one is app2, use very, very, very simple style card and just an H1. So it should be like obvious that this is like a different module. And now I'm going to do something which is not that common, but it can become very useful. I'm going to go to my main file. And here I'm going to find the code that actually bootstrap my app module. See, platform browser dynamic bootstrap module, app module. But I want to bootstrap another module. I also want to app2 module, which means that on my index, let's see, app2 component, app2, which means that on my index HTML, I'm going to have the app root, and this one is going to be root component of module 1. I'm also going to have app2, which is the root component for module 2. And the reason I'm showing you this is because of, first of all, I want you to know, I want you to understand that you're not restricted for creating just one Angular app. On your main file, you can use the same platform and bootstrap more than one, which open up very interesting opportunities. All right, let's see if that works. Almost. A platform with a different configuration has been created. Please destroy it first. I tried to do use the platform dynamic to bootstrap 2 modules. I think it created some kind of a problem. Yeah. So yeah, that's not. I had an idea of how I wanted to show you something very interesting. It didn't work out very well. At least it didn't work out as I expected. Which is, well, this is part of the. This is kind of the things that you can get when you code. So I want to give it another try. I mean, I'm familiar with this problem. It's because I've got like 2 platforms. This, look. First, I'm going to create a platform. And I'm going to call this function because I don't want to call it twice. And then, on the same platform, I try to bootstrap 2 modules. All right? Did it? No error handler. Is platform module, browser module included? Well, import browser module. We got it? Yeah. So we've got two modules, Bootstrap on the same app. And why do I think that this is interesting, putting aside dependency injection? Because it means that you can technically bootstrap and create the variety of different Angular apps. Each one of them got its own root module and its own hierarchy. And it's good to know anyway. Now, look, I created a platform which kind of become very interesting. What if on app 2, on app component 2, I want to go ahead and inject the counter service, public counter service, all right? And this counter service, let me use it, this counter count. Let's copy it with H2. So now on a different module, I'm trying to inject the counter service, which obviously gonna give me an R3 injector error. So I'm gonna go ahead to my first module, actually to my service, and try to trick it. I'm gonna tell him provided in root. Now go back to my platform, all right? And as you can see here, well, it seems like I'm getting a 0. Not sure though how many instances I get. So let me go ahead and visit my app component, remove the counter service from here, and then I'm going to go to the child component and from here. I don't need this. Don't worry, I've got this code for you. It's gonna fail, all right? Because now it's provided. Just did I clean up all the declarations from everywhere, and declared on the service level that it should be provided in root level. All right. So now it seems like my first module is kind of synchronized, but the other module doesn't seem to work. How many instances do I got? Only one, so I've got a singleton. I'm gonna jump to app 2 module and the app 2 component. I'm gonna create here a button, just like before. All right, I'm gonna take this click, call the counter increment. I'm gonna make it visible, so btn and btn info. And what do you think gonna happen now? I mean, if I click this, it's gonna be 15, and then here it's gonna be something else. All right, and here, I mean, it seems like I've got like kind of 2 instances, all right, 1 and 2, and each one of them exists on its own module, but this is not what I'm trying to achieve. So let me go back to the service and try to do something like this. Instead of providing in root level, which going to provide it on each module root, let me provide it on platform and see what's going to happen. Right? Now I'm increasing this to 10. When I click the other one, I'm already at 10. Look, app 2, I'm 20, and then increase child started from 21. If you expected to get any kind of change detection automatically synchronized, forget about it. It's not going to happen. We can configure it, but more important than this, I've got 2 completely different modules that will bootstrap on the same platform and can share the same singleton, which again open up very interesting scenarios where sometimes you want to dynamically or lazily bootstrap a different module, but you want it to share the same that it's already created on a completely different model. So it's not very common, but I want you to know that providing platform is totally possible, right? So this, because module doesn't have any hierarchy, we don't have any special annotations like we had on the node injector, where you can control the self, the skip self, and stuff like this. Right. Last thing that I want you to learn today about dependency injection, and by this kind of covering, I believe, all of the basics, is if you remember, I showed you that if you've got like a constant somewhere, constants, it looks like this, and here you've got some kind of value. You want to be able to inject these constants, but there is no key. It's not a type. I can't use it for the dependency injector. I can decorate with injectable or something like this. How do I provide it forward? Let me check. First, I'm going to create a different file. I'm going to call it constants. Yes. Usually in Relapse, I'm creating a library. I call this library providers, something like this, and then put all of these simple files in it. So here I've got these constants, right? I want to be able to inject them, and I want to use like specific name, like constants. For this, I'm going to use Angular injection token, which is a function. It's going to give me a valid token that I can use to register my code. It's going to look like this: export const. This one actually can be private. I'm going to show you in a second why I made it private and how can I make it even better. I'm going to use the constants. It's going to be equal to new injection token. Injection token get optionally a description, like token to get constants. Even more powerful is the other argument, which is I create an object and I can already declare that this one is provided in, let's say, root, because it makes sense to me, maybe platform, right? Maybe even platform, because it's constants and I want it to be, like if I want to be very precise. And the next one gonna be a factory function where I can provide a function that eventually gonna return, well, this object. Put here, I'm not exporting it, as you can see, all right? And let me provide my constants. So what I just created is a way to basically create a data provider, just like we use with classes with annotations, but without classes and annotations, with plain objects and values. All right. How do I use it? How do I inject such a thing? Well, it's going to be by using a very special annotation. Inside my app component, I want to inject these constants, all right? Because this is an injection token, I'm going to use the inject, and then I can provide this injection token and get a hold on my constants. I'm probably gonna want to give it maybe some kind of a type. And I'm gonna show you in a second how can get a type for it. But first of all, let me try to inject private constants. I can do this and public, right? And here you see that I'm getting the constants. The only thing that I found it a little bit annoying here is that I can't give the type. I mean, technically, because you see the constants and using an injection token. I created this injection token passing, an object. Well, technically that's not true because I can also create an interface. So I'm going to have some kind of type. Let's call it I constants. So I can technically I can say I'm going to have a value here, and it's going to be a string, because the injection token can use generic, where I can actually define what I expect to get from this constant. Which now it's yelling at me, I think is because I didn't give it the right type, and now it's yelling at me right here because why? Number string, you're probably right, you see, also getting a benefit. Now my injection token get an interface, and now I can come here and say, all right, this is I constants. For this, I have to export interface, and that is code complete. Let me hold it right here, right? Oh, now I can see the messages that my voice wasn't too clear, so I hope you had a chance to actually hear me time. Let me summarize because I got 2 minutes. First of all, hopefully from this hour of demonstration and explanation, you got a little bit more understanding of how exactly to use the API and what it's mean. I'm going to share the slides with you, and I'm going to tell you that on YouTube, and I'm going to share this link with you as well, I've got 5 more hours of just diving into the same thing that you've seen right now, but even deeper. So if you find my explanation clear and you like this style of learning and live coding, I invite you to check out these videos. Like I said before, you can find everything on my website, which is near.life. Dependency injection in Angular is powerful, and I highly encourage you to be familiar with all of your options. Dive into these decorators. Be aware of the node injector, root level injector. Be aware that you can control it. Don't be mistaken thinking that sometimes that Angular are just singletons, because that's not the case. Check out and explore, try to get out of the boundaries of a single module and a single root component. And if you're gonna have more questions, if you wanna get some more references, or if you just wanna keep in touch, I invite you to join my social media links. You can find my email as well. And please feel free to send me emails, and I'll be more than happy to send you more materials, references, and everything else you want to know. Can you please share the presentation? Of course, I'm going to share the presentation. Like I said before, go to near.life. You're going to find my I forgot the name for it. I think it's SlideShare. All right, and you're going to find the slides right there. It's going to be up and updated in something like I don't know, a few minutes or so. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learn at least one thing which you wasn't familiar with. And yeah, and I'll see you around, guys. Thank you very much.